Hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the 1111 Matrix Code Revealed. As always, I'm your host, Garrett King. I have got an exciting video to show you guys today. This quest that I'm on, that I talked about in the last video, this sort of new venture that I'm going down in finding and proving that our lives are controlled by numbers, that we are all embedded into this code, and that there is, in fact, a code that is operating behind the scenes. This little venture is proving to be very exciting, and just so far, just this little tiny thing that I've done, which I'm going to show you, over the weekend, is shockingly mind-blowing on how accurate these numbers and these phrases through Gematria play into this event that I'm going to show you. Okay? And I don't even really know what sparked me to look into this event, unless it was just something that, scrolling through YouTube or, up late at night, watching Ancient Aliens or whatever. That may have had something to do with it. It may have kind of inadvertently planted the seed into my mind. But for whatever reason, I chose to look up the events of the Betty and Barney Hill case. And so I was looking over the Wikipedia page for the abduction case. I was watching several documentaries over the weekend, and I was taking certain words and phrases that were being said and putting them into the Gematria program that I showed you in my last video. Now, I kind of want to explain something, because I've shown some of this to a couple of people. And one of the comments that came back was, how could Gematria know about some of these events? Well, Gematria doesn't know. There's no way for it to know, the events. What you're doing with Gematria is you are looking for word connections and number connections. And I understand, and I get it, some people are going to say that I manipulated words and manipulated phrases so that it would have these results, okay? But I want you to stop and think about it, for just a second, okay? So think about this. Regardless if I have adjusted words to meet a certain criteria, the end result is still the same, okay? It still has the same value, the same number value. And that's the whole point. That is what you're doing with Gematria, is you are looking for word and number connections. So you have to change a word out or add a word in, whatever the case may be, to achieve the end result, the end total. And a better way that I can explain this is, think about when and I've described this kind of little scenario before, especially in my book. So Gematria works like a puzzle, okay? So you have all these pieces laid out on the table, right? And what you're doing is you pick up a piece and you're going to start putting the pieces together that form the border. Or at least that's the way most people do it. But so you find a piece and you know it's a border piece, okay? And you have all the border pieces laid out. But what you're doing is you're going to pull a piece that looks like it may fit, but it doesn't actually end up fitting. So then you go to the next piece. That's exactly what you're doing with Gematria. You're finding a word, and then you're taking a word that you think is going to fit, and either it fits or it doesn't fit, or a group of words that fit or don't fit. So, no one can sit here and say that I am manipulating things to meet a certain outcome, and that has any sort of, bearing on it, because regardless, at the end of the day, it still has that value, and that value still matches the numbers that I've placed into it. And you'll see what I mean here in just a moment. So yeah, let's just go ahead and jump into it, because I think this is just super exciting. Some of you may know the Betty and Barney Hill case. Some of you may not. Basically, the gist of the story is this couple were coming back from a trip to Niagara Falls, and on their way home, Betty saw a light in the sky that she thought might be a planet. But then the light started to move, and then they assumed that it was either a satellite or a plane. But then the thing started kind of acting erratically. So her husband, they stopped the car at one point, got, binoculars out and looked. And then at some point he realized this is not a plane. Because at one point when he pulled the binoculars out and was looking, he said that he could see people, or beings, I guess I should say, inside the craft, like they were in this window port or whatever it was. He could see them, and they didn't look quite like we do. So this kind of shocked and spooked him. It's a fascinating case. It's a fascinating story. It's very well known if you are, into the UFO community or not. But regardless, if you're not into it, still, I urge you to still just take the time to watch this video and see the connections, because whether you're a believer in, abduction cases or, UFOs or not, it doesn't really matter. I'm showing these connections, and that, man, when you see some of these phrases and how they match up perfectly, I mean, to a T, there's no denying. There's no denying that these codes exist and that our lives are controlled by numbers. Okay? So let's just jump right into this. So again, like I did last time, I kind of mind mapped this out. So I have Betty and Barney Hill connections, and I have their photo right here with their dog. Over to the left, I have Barney Hill Jr., and then the Gematria ciphers. And keep in mind, folks, these connections that I found are using one cipher, okay? I haven't even begun to look at the other ciphers. So all that I'm about to show you is found in one single cipher, and I use the Jewish Latin cipher that I talked about last time. Okay, so again, to the left, I have Barney Hill. I have the Gematria value for his name, his full name, Barney Hill Jr. So he gives us the value of 1265. Over to the right, I have Betty Hill. Her Gematria value in the same cipher is 664. And then in the middle, I have the value for both of their names added together. Okay, so 1265 plus 664, 1929. Okay, and just so no one can say that I'm making shit up here, because I know there will be those people. 1929 plus, sorry, that is the total. Back this up. So 1265 plus 664 is 1929. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started here. And I guess probably let's just jump over here real quick. And you can see I have some stuff already stored in here. But let's just type in Barney Hill Jr. And as you can see, Latin Jewish, the value for his name is 1265. And then let's put in Betty Hill. And you can see the value for her name is 664. Okay, so I'm not making up any of these numbers. This is the cipher. These are the things that I've typed in. Okay. Now, what I find fascinating about the phrases with Barney Hill is we have to, again, keep in mind, think back to what I showed you in the last video with my parents, how my dad, was his name. That's his birth given name. So with Barney Hill, this being his birth given name, it's like these values, these phrases that match the value of his name suggests that the outcome of our lives is predetermined. Like, this was already embedded into his name from the moment he was born. Okay? Betty, the phrases that come up with her name and then their names combined, of course, would only happen after she gets married to Barney. Because her name before she was married was, if I can remember, Eunice Elizabeth Barrett. Okay? And so she gets Betty from Elizabeth. And so she just shortened it to Betty, and that's, Betty Hill. That's where we get the name. But of course, after she marries Barney, then her last name changes to Hill. So again, keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. If she had remained Barrett or married somebody else, she would have had a completely different last name, and these events probably never would have happened. Okay? So just keep all that in mind. So let's look at the phrases that match for Barney Hill. So had conflict, Route 3, Lancaster, New Hampshire. Now, folks, this incident happened while they were on Route 3 near Lancaster, New Hampshire. Okay. Look it up. Go to Wikipedia. Watch the documentaries. Listen to what they're talking about. All of this. Okay. So again, had conflict, Route 3, Lancaster, New Hampshire. Exact name of the places and Route 3, the highway that they were on. Okay. So aboard the craft, Betty, in one of the videos I watched, I think it was called the Lost Betty Hill interview or something like that. It's on YouTube. It's about an hour or so long. If you guys want to go watch it, I think there's a shorter 9 or 13-minute version, but that's just taking snippets out of the longer one. But anyway, so when she's aboard the craft, she's talking to one of the beings, and because they look slightly different, she tells him, I know you're not from around here. Where are you from? And he shows her what she calls a star map. Now, what are the chances that Betty Hill star map, gift of God, has the value of 1265? Okay. Betty Hill star map, gift of God. Now, one of the other things that they talked about that they experienced was missing time. So this whole trip should have taken, I think they said roughly around 5 hours, but it ended up taking around 7. So there's 2 hours of time that they can't account for. Okay. So again, what are the chances that Betty Hill missing time hidden in a code would have the value of 1265? Okay. All of these are the values of Barney's name. Barney's name, the value for his name is matching the phrases that are telling us exactly what happened to them. And it gets even deeper when we look at the value of their names combined. Okay. Now, simply the whole point, the part where it says hidden in a code, well, it is hidden in a code. We're finding it through this gematria. So Betty Hill missing time hidden in a code. I mean, it makes sense. It's the value of 1265. Now, and keep in mind, here's the other thing to keep in mind. These phrases contain their names. Betty Hill. These next ones contain Barney Hill's name. So Barney Hill aboard UFO hide implant. Okay. Now, to my knowledge, it's never been said that he had an implant placed into him or not. So I have no idea. I find it interesting that that phrase has the same value of his name. And when we talk about some of these other phrases coming up here in just a second, it makes me wonder if he didn't already have an implant inside of him from a possible earlier abduction that he just simply cannot remember or could not remember. Both of these people are now passed away. But the night that this event happened, this craft, could it have been following them based on the possible implant that Barney might have had? Because they talk about how this thing followed them for like nearly 30 miles. Okay. Could that implant, if there was an implant inside of Barney, been like the beacon that they were using to track them, to keep up with them? Don't know. Now the next phrase, Barney Hill aboard UFO circle of pain. Okay. His experience aboard the craft was more intense than Betty's. Okay. When you listen to the hypnosis recordings, there's a moment where he just flips his shit, like screaming that he needs to get his gun. I mean, this man is petrified, just extremely scared. So, and they talk about the craft being a circular craft. So naturally, Barney Hill aboard UFO, and it's a circular craft, it is a circle of pain, if that's what he was experiencing aboard the craft. Now the next one, Barney Hill aboard UFO, seeds of Adam. Now this one's interesting because Barney talks about how he felt like they extracted semen from him. So think about this. So seeds of Adam. I've talked about this before. What is Adam in the Bible? Well, Adam, the word Adam, the Hebrew word for Adam, just simply translates to a person. A person. So seeds of a person. It would reflect back to his seed. So Barney Hill aboard UFO, seeds of Adam. Now the next one with the value of 1265, I think is extraordinarily unique for the simple fact that Betty and Barney were an interracial couple. Okay. And this was in the 60s, I believe, which was pretty uncommon. And it was, not generally favorably looked upon. That doesn't matter to me. I don't care. So, I mean, I care that, people had an issue with it. I don't care that they were an interracial couple. So that has no bearing on anything. I mean, more power to them. Okay. So it's just interesting though, that her first name, Eunice, sorry. Why am I saying Eunice? That's so fucked up. Anyway, Eunice Elizabeth Barrett, that's her maiden name, her birth given name. So what are the chances that Eunice and Barney, or just Eunice, Barney, interracial merge, okay, has the value of 1265. Now think about this for just a second. So her first name, her true first name, not Betty, but Eunice, Barney, his first name, the word interracial, which they were an interracial couple, and then the word merge, okay? Well, what happens when you're married? You merge into a couple. You're two separate people merging into a single unit, if you will, for lack of a better word, okay? So Eunice, Barney, interracial merge. It just, again, that makes sense. And it has the value of 1265. So again, all of this from the value of Barney's name, 1265. And it's predicting or showing events that happened to them both. Now, let's jump over to Betty before we jump into the combination of both of them. So jumping over to Betty, okay, so Betty has the value, or Betty Hill has the value of 664, 664. So these phrases have the same value, 664. And watch how closely they describe the events. So the phrase, sees a shocking UFO, 664. Okay, same value. Alien abduction face to face. Okay. Spoke to the good alien. Okay. When you watch Betty's interview, she talks about how the being that she spoke to, which I think she called the leader, they had more of a bonding relationship. Like, she felt like that the experience wasn't bad. Barney, on the other hand, it wasn't such a great experience for him. So, but in Betty's mind, this wasn't bad. So, spoke to the good alien, it makes sense. Now, I also remember her saying or reading somewhere where like she was like kind of hyped up from the whole experience. You know, there was the whole nervousness, but then the excitement. So that it could be taken both ways, that she was on edge. She was on edge with nervousness, or she was on edge with excitement. But regardless, on edge, spoke to the alien. The value is 664. Okay? The phrase, it makes missing time. It makes missing time. Well, what makes missing time? Was it the alien? Was it the whole abduction? Was it the UFO itself? I mean, it's all of it combined. So it makes missing time, and that's what they reported, missing time. Now this one's unique too. So each sees an odd-shaped craft. Okay? Literally telling us that both of them, each one of them, sees an odd-shaped craft. Now, this last one has nothing to do with the events. I just threw this in here because it still connects to something in her life. So Betty died, I don't remember what year it was, but it was in the month of October. Okay? She died in the month of October. And the phrase, the doomed October death. The doomed October death is the value of her name, 664. Okay? Now let's move into the phrases that have the value of 1929, and that is the combination of both of their names, the values of both of their names added together. Okay? Now, when you listen to the interviews, they both talk about how this all started on their trip home, and it was around between like 10:30 and 11 o'clock. Okay, so around 10:30-ish, this all took place. So this phrase, and so it begins around 10:30 at night, has the value of 1929. And so it begins around 10:30 at night. And that's exactly what they said happened. Now this one, holy crap, this next one, the Hills will be abducted aboard UFO. The Hills will be abducted aboard UFO. That has the value of 1929, the combination of both of their names together. Now, I think the reason that I found more phrases with the value of both of their names is because this event happened to the both of them. Now, here's something else that Betty talks about in that video. So in that one video, the Lost interview with Betty Hill, whatever it was called, I don't remember exactly word for word. but it was something like that, the Lost Betty Hill interview or something like that. She talks about that she was more excited when she saw the light. And at one point, she actually says that she kind of feels like she may have caused this to all to happen because she was calling out to the craft, like just calling out, like, who are you? Like trying to get their attention. She's like waving at it and all this stuff. So she literally said that she called out to it. She said, who are you? And all this stuff. So this next phrase, around, and again, think about this, around 10:30, she sees a UFO, called it. Okay? Called it. And that's exactly what she said she did. She called to it. Now, the next one is vast visitor. Vast visitor. Now, think about this. So, when Betty was talking to the being on board that she calls the leader, and he showed her the map, it was a map of what they later found out was Zeta Reticuli. And so think about that. So that's a vast distance away. And this is a visitor. So vast visitor. Again, it makes sense. 1929. Now, some of these are going to get super specific. Some of these already are, but again, it's going to keep going. So they talk about how they were 1 mile south of Indian Head when the object descended down close to them. This phrase, 1 mile south, Indian Head, the object descended close. Okay, 1929. That's the value of that phrase. The next one, the silent craft hovered, stored in brain. So they both saw the craft hovering silently, and it's stored in their memory. It's stored in their brain. Again, makes perfect sense. The silent craft hovered, stored in brain. Then they talk about how, this thing was following them, and then it lands, like this fiery things on the ground. So the next phrase, fiery orb sitting on the ground, armor of God. Armor of God. So we're talking about the object sitting on the ground like they described. And then it seems to be telling us that the material that it's made of must be super strong because it's giving the description that it's armor of God. Okay? The next phrase, had a deed, they were examined. Had a deed, they were examined. Now, this one's interesting because it makes it sound like there was some kind of contract. And that's why they were examined. Now, again, think back to what I just said about, Barney possibly having an implant. Were they both, or were Barney alone being monitored, tracked all this time? Who knows? But just still a very interesting phrase. Had a deed, they were examined. Had a deed also could just simply be that they had a mission to fulfill. They had something, not Betty and Barney, but these beings. They had this mission that they had to fulfill, and they went, put them through this examination. Now, this next one is interesting because Betty says that the being spoke to her in English, but it was kind of like a broken English. Barney says that when he heard them speak, it was in some kind of like guttural language, or like, he couldn't make out what was being said. It was completely foreign to him. But when they communicated with him, he felt like it was through, he called it thought transference, because he was not aware of the word or the term telepathy at this time. So this exact phrase, the beings indeed spoke through thought transference. What are the chances, folks? Again, the beings indeed spoke through thought transference, has the value of 1929. Now, this next one, I talked about Betty Hill dying in the month of October. She died from lung cancer. This next one, Betty Hill dead of lung cancer trouble in October. That's exactly what happened. Now, the next one is also interesting and highly detailed. So, after these events, they contacted, and I don't know if it's pronounced Pease or Peace, but it's an Air Force base in Newington, New Hampshire, and it's spelled P-E-A-S-E. Okay, so it's Pease or Peace. Don't know which. But the phrase is one called, and I'm gonna pronounce it Pease. Okay, but one called Pease Air Force Base in Newington, New Hampshire. Okay, saying that literally one of them called, which they did, and reported the event to them. Again, highly detailed. They also talked about how this craft followed them, like I mentioned earlier, for 30 miles. Okay, for 30 some odd miles. So the phrase blazing, it chased them for 30 miles. Again, what are the chances, folks? It's describing everything that they talked about. Okay, Betty also says that during her experience on the craft, they tried taking a giant needle and inserting it into her navel, but it started hurting. And from some of the reports I read, they didn't tell her they were going to do this. They just went about doing it until she started experiencing the pain, and so then they stopped. And so the phrase unapologetic inserted giant needle in navel. Unapologetic inserted giant needle in navel. The value is 1929. And again, folks, there's nothing stopping you, like I've said before, from downloading the software, putting in these events, and getting the exact same totals and seeing the exact same thing that I'm telling you. Now, after the events happened, she read a book by Donald Kehoe. I think it was called Flying Saucers Are Real. And so then after she read it, she wrote him a letter. She typed up a letter and sent it to him. So how interesting that she crafted a typed letter to Donald Kehoe. Has the same value of 1929. Now, this next one, also highly detailed. This is the very last one. But she talks about in that video, the lost interview with Betty Hill, whatever it was called, that she never referred to them as aliens. She referred to them as astronauts because to her, that's what they were. They were astronauts, okay, from somewhere else. So this one just blows my mind. The phrase, Betty called the little alien men astronauts. That's exactly what she did. Betty called the little men astronauts. That phrase, again, has a value of 1929. Now, folks, this is just the beginning. I just started on researching this particular topic. And again, I've only used one cipher, and I've gotten all of this matching, correlating data coming through in these phrases that matches perfectly with the events that happened to them. That just simply does not seem like it should be happening. But it is. Imagine what I'll find if I take this down into the other ciphers. Imagine what I will find when I start searching other topics. And if I end up getting the same results, the same type of, phrases coming back that is describing everything that happened to them. I mean, it's mind-boggling. It really is. You have to stop and think about how mind-boggling it is that, again, the value for Betty's name, 664, is only after she marries Barney. If she had remained Betty Barrett, it would be a completely different value. And none of these phrases would match up. And then, obviously, the two of them get married. This event occurs, and then we combine the total of both of their names, and we get all of these phrases that match exactly the events that they said happened, that they said took place. It seems very unreal, and yet we're sitting right here looking at it. Now, there was two more that I found that I took out of Barney's list here of matching values because I don't know if either one of these could be true or not. Okay, because I haven't heard anything to suggest it. I just added these because I thought it was interesting. Now, there's a lot of people that are aware and talk about this supposed treaty between Eisenhower and this race of extraterrestrial beings. And this treaty basically is supposed to have been something where, you know, they're trading information or they're giving permission for these beings to abduct, you know, citizens for like a trade-off of information, technology, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of mystery around that. And it's just interesting, but we don't know all of the government entities that would have been involved in this, or had some kind of small part in it. So I don't know. You make of this what you will, but these two phrases include the CIA, and the first one is CIA Dream Team had Betty Hill abducted. Okay, that makes it sound like they initiated it. But if it was some kind of treaty and the CIA did have some kind of involvement, well, not only did they have Betty Hill abducted, but then they had everyone else that these beings would have abducted, abducted as well. So, and then the second phrase also includes the CIA. So CIA had Betty abducted, and then the word UFO. So I just thought those were interesting, but I can't, that's why I haven't added it necessarily, because there's no corroborating evidence to support that. That's why I pulled those out. I just thought they were interesting. Who knows? Who knows what kind of information will come out later down the road, if any at all. And it may simply be that these do match, but they just don't fit the picture, the bigger picture. But again, like I said, I just thought they were interesting, so I went ahead and put them on here. I just didn't include them, and I just wanted to tell you about them, just because I thought they were kind of interesting, and I didn't want to leave anything out. So, but that's basically it, folks. This video, I just don't see how anybody can sit here and again deny these connections. And again, like I said, people are going to say that I manipulated these phrases to achieve these values. I mean, it doesn't matter. So what if I did? So what if I changed certain words or inserted certain words to match what happened, but then also match the event? It doesn't change the fact that those words have that value. Whether I swapped words out or not, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. that's what you're doing. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of gematria, is finding words that connect. And that's exactly what I did. And it matches. It matches perfectly. So there you have it, folks. I'm going to go ahead and end this here, but I do want to but I do want to put something out there for you guys. So, this was just one random topic that, like it just popped into my head, and, I did a search on it, and because I knew that there was, relative information on the internet and elsewhere that I could go and look at and get, key things that happened, and then start plugging that in and seeing if I can find connections. And lo and behold, I found a shit ton. So with that being said, I kind of want to put it out there for you guys to, in the comments, drop some ideas of things that I could look up and see if we can find connections like this in the exact same way. It doesn't have to be, UFO, alien related. It doesn't have to be anything like that. It can be any topic you want. Let's just make sure that whatever topic it is, that there's relative information out there to look at, and then see if, we can incorporate phrases to match values, and make these connections. Okay. I don't really see this as being a tool in which, someone can come to me and say, hey, can you do a search on the, Anunnaki or something like that? It's, well, yeah, I could, but let's, the Anunnaki and what, am I just going to start putting in that name, the word Anunnaki, and then see what the value is? And then what else do I need to add to it? Like, give me some in-depth, things to search, and I'll go through the list and see, what I can find, and present to you what I do find. So yeah. Okay. Let's go ahead and end this here. And I hope you all take care. Let me know what you think of this video, because again, I think these connections are just extraordinary. I've been, showing them to my brother over the weekend, and he's, he's just, again, it's like every new thing I show him, he's just like, how? Like, how? How? And it's like, I can't tell you how, man. I can only show you the results and show you that what I'm saying, that our reality is encoded, is real. It's a real thing. But how, I don't know. I don't know yet. So, yeah. Okay, that's it. Until next time, folks, I hope you all take care, and we'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.